She called me trash, then begged me to save her life. My sister has called me a mistake since I was a child, and now she needs me to stay alive. I'm the only match, the only one, and I don't know if I can save someone who spent her entire life destroying me. My name is Emily. I'm 27, and this is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to face, and that's saying a lot because my life was never easy. My older sister Lauren was always treated like a princess, and me, like the stain that ruined the family portrait. For as long as I can remember, I felt like there was something wrong with me. Not with the world, with me. Because that's what everyone around me made me believe. Lauren is 30 now, and even sick, even losing her hair, even with that pale skin and sunken eyes of someone fighting death, she still finds a way to look at me like I'm beneath her. Like my only worth in this world is having the right blood type and genetic compatibility. When my mom called with the news, I was at work. She didn't start with a hi. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, voice trembling, "Emily, Lauren has leukemia. It's aggressive, and you're our only hope." Do you have any idea what it's like to hear that? Not as a request, as a sentence, as if my entire life I've been expected to pay a debt I never agreed to, as if simply being alive means I owe it to others to fix pain I didn't cause. My head started spinning. I stayed silent. My mom kept talking, saying the tests had already been done, that I was a match, that the doctors were optimistic. Then she dropped it. "You have to do this. She's your sister. Your sister." The same sister who locked me out of the house in the middle of the night when I was 12 because she thought it was funny to see me cry in the cold. The same one who spread lies at school, telling people I stole money from our mom. The same one who, the day I got a full scholarship to college, laughed in my face and said, "I bet you won't even last one semester." But now, I have to save her. And the worst part is, I can't just say no, because there's a part of me, small but alive, that still wants to be loved by that family. That still hopes maybe, just maybe, if I do this, they'll finally see me, respect me, love me. I hate that part of me, that stupid hope, but it's there, suffocating my chest. And time is running out. They gave me a week to decide, a week to choose between my sanity and the life of the woman who spent hers trying to erase mine. And before anyone says, "It's just bone marrow, it won't kill you," let me explain something. What's killing me isn't the procedure. It's everything that comes before, everything that comes after, everything it means. Everything it reopens inside of me. I grew up in a house where love was conditional, where everything I did had to be better, prettier, quieter. I was the middle child. Yes, there was someone besides Lauren, our youngest brother, Matthew, but he was the only boy, the baby of the house, untouchable. So that left me. I was the excess. My mom made a point of comparing me to Lauren in everything. When I got an A in math, she asked why I wasn't good at sports, like Lauren. When I won a prize at the science fair, she said Lauren had won something similar years ago, and hers was bigger, better, more important. There was one birthday, I think it was my 9th, when my mom forgot to buy a cake. I remember walking into the kitchen all excited, in my new dress, hoping for a surprise. But Lauren was at the center of the living room, opening a gift that wasn't even hers. Her birthday was the following week, but my mom had bought her present early, so she wouldn't have to go out again. I watched the whole scene in silence, with a smile that hurt my face. Deep down, I knew there was no point in complaining, because if I did, I was being dramatic. There goes Emily playing the victim again. That was my label. The victim. The fragile one. The overreactor. The overly sensitive. And Lauren? She was everything I could never be. Tall, thin, blonde, blue eyes. The perfect daughter image. She knew it, and she used it. She was cruel. Not with screams or slaps, with sharp words and calculated gestures. When I tried to speak at the dinner table, she cut me off with a joke. If I bought a new shirt, she'd say it made me look fat. And now that she's locked out of my life, I can finally breathe. I rented a new place, small, full of light. I painted the walls in my favorite colors. I threw away boxes of old things, everything that still smelled like them. Clothes, papers, letters, especially letters. Today, I live in peace, even without a family. When I brought a friend home, Lauren would always find a way to tell some funny story about me, just to humiliate me. And my parents? They laughed, thought it was just sisters joking around, but it wasn't. It was a silent war where only I bled. Little by little, I began to shrink, to stop trying, to accept that maybe I really was a mistake. That if everyone saw something wrong in me, maybe the flaw was real. I stopped dancing, stopped singing, stopped bringing friends over. I became a shadow inside my own family. And Lauren kept shining. Volleyball queen, cheerleader, handsome boyfriends, prom night with a limousine. When I hit my teenage years, any crumb of affection from her felt like sunlight in a basement. Once, she let me borrow a necklace without me asking. For a moment, I thought maybe she was changing. Maybe, deep down, there was some humanity in her. The next day, she told the entire school I had stolen it. Said I was a thief. They made me write a letter of apology. They called me a thief in front of the principal. I was 13. After that day, I stopped wearing anything that wasn't strictly mine. Even if someone offered, I refused. I was afraid of being accused again. It felt like I was walking on glass inside my own house, always watching myself, trying not to bother anyone, not to stand out, not to trigger anyone. School was my only refuge. But even there, Lauren found a way to reach me. She was 2 years older, but everyone loved her. All it took was one word from her to turn my day into hell. One time, she told the class I wore diapers until I was 7. She made it up, but that was enough for people to start calling me Big Baby in the hallways. For weeks, I cried alone in the bathroom and wiped my face before going back to class. I had no one to confide in. My mom said I was overreacting again. My dad, well, he was physically there, but his soul was always too busy. With work, the news, anything but me. When he talked to me, it was to scold. When he talked to Lauren, it was to praise. If I got a bad grade, he'd yell. If she did something wrong, he'd say, "She just has a strong personality." One night at dinner, Lauren poured juice on my plate just because I was making a weird face. I was 14. My dad looked and said, "You provoke her," then kept eating. My mom chuckled. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried until I fell asleep. It was one of the first times I wished I could just leave, disappear, never come back. But I was a child. I had nowhere to go. So I settled for surviving in silence. At 16, I started working at a diner behind their backs. I bought my own phone, my clothes, even my own pads, just so I wouldn't have to depend on them for anything. And with every penny I saved, I dreamed of the day I'd leave that house. Not for the freedom, but for the chance to become someone far from the version they forced on me. But even when I tried to leave, Lauren found a way to pull me back. In my last year of high school, I got a scholarship to a university across the country. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. I had everything ready. Bags packed, ticket bought, heart racing. 2 days before the trip, the university called. There was a problem with my transcripts. Someone had sent an email saying my academic records had been tampered with. It was signed as if from the school. It took me weeks to prove it was a lie. I lost the scholarship. Months later, I found out, through one of Lauren's ex-friends, that she was the one who did it. She said it was a joke, that she didn't think they'd believe it. I remember exactly where I was when Vanessa, that former friend, told me. We were in a grocery store parking lot years later. She was leaning against the car, smoking, looking nervous. Said she'd always felt guilty for staying quiet, but that I deserved to know the truth, that Lauren did it on purpose, that she laughed afterward, said it'd be funny to see me crushed when I found out. Her exact words. You know that feeling like the floor just disappears? I felt that. My stomach flipped. My mouth went dry. And all I could think was, she really did it. She destroyed my future for fun. And my mom, when I confronted her, she said she couldn't believe gossip. You've always been jealous of your sister, Emily. Maybe you're exaggerating. Exaggerating. I lost my scholarship, my dream, years of effort, all because of a joke no one had the courage to punish. After that, I stopped trying to be part of that family. I distanced myself as much as I could, got another job, started studying online with the savings from my diner shifts. It took me years, sharing apartments with strangers, living off ramen and plain rice for months. But I made it. I graduated. With a real degree, with no help from anyone. And still, do you know what Lauren said when my mom told her I had finished college? Online college? That doesn't even count. Then she laughed, and they all laughed with her. I heard it on speakerphone. It was Thanksgiving. I had called to wish them a happy holiday. Stupid me. They laughed. And I hung up without saying another word. Lauren could do anything cruel, and there was always a ready excuse. She's just stressed. She has a strong personality. You're too sensitive. But with me, any mistake was a sentence. I couldn't be late, couldn't raise my voice, couldn't complain. I was always the problem. The out-of-place piece in the puzzle. I spent my entire youth trying to find a reason, a flaw in myself that explained it. Was it my appearance, my voice, my way of being? But with time, I understood. There was nothing wrong with me. The game was the problem, and it had been rigged from the start. There was a time I thought I might finally breathe. It was when I started dating Jason. He was kind, calm, the type who truly listened. We met at a summer course I was taking at night, and for some reason, he genuinely seemed to like me. Who I was. No comparisons, no games. It took me a while to introduce him to my family. I was scared, but he insisted. He wanted to know all of me. Said every story deserved to be heard, even the ugly parts. So one day, I took him to my parents' house for a Sunday barbecue. And of course, Lauren was there. At first, she was surprisingly polite, almost Friendly. So friendly it gave me chills. But I tried to believe, tried to think maybe things were changing. Maybe she had matured. But no, it was just the beginning of her new game. In the weeks that followed, Jason started getting anonymous messages on Instagram. Things about me, hints, accusations. At first, he didn't even tell me. But one day he showed up acting weird and asked if I had lied about my degree. I was shocked. I asked where that came from. He hesitated. Showed me the screenshots. It was the most obvious fake account in the world. Generic photos, 0 followers, random name. But the words, the tone, were Lauren's. The sarcasm, the references, even the nicknames she used to hurt me. Jason stayed by my side. He believed me. But I saw it in his eyes. The doubt. The crack. And after that, nothing was the same. A few months later, he broke up with me. Said he needed time. Said my family was too complicated. I cried so much that night my throat felt like it was burning from the inside out. And the worst part is, deep down, I already knew this would happen. Because it always does. Everything I try to build, she destroys. After that, I made a promise. I would never again introduce anyone from my life to that family. They didn't know who I was. Never wanted to. To them, I was just Lauren's shadow. An obstacle. A footnote in the story of the perfect daughter. Over time, I became more and more invisible to them. On holidays, I stopped showing up. Made excuses, work shifts, trips with friends, headaches. Sometimes I didn't even bother to lie. Just stayed quiet. And of course, no one called to ask if I was okay. But when Lauren needed something, help with a resume, a contact I knew, even money, guess who was the first person my mom called? Me. Always me. Because despite everything, I was the nice one. The one who always helps. And for a while, I did help. Because that rotten sliver of hope still clung to me. That childish part of me that believed, if I were just kind enough, useful enough, loving enough, maybe they'd finally see me as part of the family. What a joke. I remember one situation in particular that still turns my stomach. Lauren had just broken up with her fiancé, and my mom asked me to go to her place to drop off some documents. Said Lauren was sad, depressed, needed support. I didn't want to go, but I went, against my instinct. When I got there, she was holding a glass of wine, looking bored. She didn't thank me. She looked me up and down and said, "Wow, you've got bags under your eyes. That little middle-class life must be wearing you out, huh?" I froze, tried to breathe, said I'd leave the papers on the table and head out. And then she laughed, like I was a joke. And then she said, "You know, I really think you were born just to be in the background of the picture. Like, to add contrast. You make the rest of us look even more amazing." That wasn't just an insult. It was a sentence. Like to her, my entire existence only had value as a prop, an object, a backdrop. And me? I stood there, speechless, my face burning, swallowing it all down again. When I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection for long minutes. And that's when I realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. I had become exactly what she always wanted me to be. Dimmed, small, silent. But the worst part of all, even after everything, when my mom called to say Lauren had leukemia, my heart raced. Not out of joy, not out of revenge, but out of panic. Because part of me, that stupid part that still wanted to belong, still cared. When I agreed to do the compatibility tests, it wasn't for her. It was for me. For the relief I thought I'd feel by saying, I tried, even when they didn't deserve it. For the thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see my worth. But I should have known better. Should have seen it coming. As soon as the doctors confirmed I was a match, my mom sent me a message. No emoji, no thank you. Just, we need to talk about the procedure. I called back thinking we'd discuss dates, risks, logistics. But no. She wanted to know if I'd agreed to do an interview with a local TV station. Lauren is well known in the community. It would be beautiful to show how her sister is willing to save her. A story of forgiveness, you know? Something inspiring. Incredible. They wanted to turn my pain into a performance. Wanted me to smile for the camera and say we'd always been close. That our bond was strong. That I'd do anything for my sister. And then came the part that broke me. She said, Lauren is also going to give a statement. She's preparing something really emotional. You'll love it. Then, unintentionally, I saw it. Accidentally. Because the video leaked early. It ended up in our old school group and was forwarded to me by a friend who knew our history. It was a preview of the news segment. Lauren looked pale, yes. Her face thinner, voice softer, but that same look in her eyes. And when the reporter asked about our relationship, she smiled and said, Emily and I have always been different, but love has always united us. She's reserved, closed off. She had trouble fitting in, you know? But I always tried to pull her into the light. And now she's saving me. It just shows how love between sisters conquers everything. I stopped the video right there. My hands were shaking. She was rewriting everything. Everything. inventing a narrative where she was the kind, radiant sister who always tried to help me. And me? The weird, withdrawn one, but grateful. The shadow who was finally doing something useful. I felt filthy, like they were stitching a costume on me by force, forcing me to play the role of the devoted sister, while burying the truth under pretty words. And even then, even after that, when they called to confirm the date of the marrow collection, I didn't say no. I just asked for time. But that time was seen as betrayal. The next day, my mother showed up at my apartment door. No warning, no knocking. She just walked in, like she still had that right. And the look on her face, it was as if I had committed a crime. As if I'd disappointed the entire world. "Do you even realize what you're doing to your sister?" she asked, her voice heavy with judgment. I tried to explain, told her I needed time, that the procedure was serious, that I couldn't just pretend we had no history, but she didn't want to hear it. She just kept repeating that Lauren was sick, that I was her only chance, that if anything happened, it would be my fault. "You're going to let your sister die?" she asked, her eyes filling with tears. And that shattered me inside, because I knew it wasn't a question. It was an accusation. She left calling me selfish, said I'd always been ungrateful, that Lauren had always loved me in her own way, and I never appreciated it. Hours later, my phone exploded with messages. Aunts, distant cousins, even old church acquaintances, all with the same tone. "Pray for your sister. Forgive. You're better than this. She would do the same for you." Would she? The woman who sabotaged my scholarship, who ruined my relationship, who used to call me useless, disguised as a joke? Every word I read felt like a thorn sinking into me. And suddenly, my pain became a public show. I became the center of an emotional campaign, a prayer chain for Lauren, and a wave of judgment for me. And then came her message. Short, cold, calculated. "If you don't want to help, that's fine. Just let me know, so I don't die waiting for nothing." I read it 10 times. Don't die waiting for nothing. She knew exactly what she was doing, turning my hesitation into a weapon, my trauma into blackmail. After that message, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning like a broken machine. It was like I was 16 again, trapped in that old cycle of guilt and silence. I felt sick. The idea of refusing ate me alive. The idea of saying yes, even worse. The next day, I ignored calls, dodged messages, went to work, barely functioning. Then, at the end of my shift, a Facebook notification popped up. My mother had posted an old photo, me and Lauren as kids, holding hands in front of a Christmas tree, smiling. The caption, "They've always been close. Now, more than ever, we need prayers for our Lauren, and strength for Emily, who's being so brave." Brave? Brave for staying quiet while they lied to everyone? The comments were a sea of applause, hearts, prayer hands, and then, among them, I saw Lauren's name. I don't want anyone to pressure my sister. I love her just the way she is. I always have. I just hope she finds strength in her heart, because I've already forgiven her. Forgiven. She forgave me, as if she was the one who'd been hurt, as if the pain was hers, as if everything I went through never happened. I started laughing, that dry, nervous, suffocating kind of laugh. Then I cried. I sat on the floor in the dark, alone, phone in hand, throat tight, and that's when I understood. To them, I was just a vessel, a compatible body, a character in the story they wanted to tell, the redeeming sister, the savior, the good daughter. As long as I stayed silent, as long as I erased everything I'd lived, they'd accept my donation, but never my pain. In the following days, I started to feel watched, like every step I took was being tracked. My social media was flooded with forced support, encouragement that felt more like pressure. "You're a warrior. Don't let hate win. Family is everything." One neighbor stopped me on the sidewalk with teary eyes and said she was praying for me, for my decision. I didn't even know she knew. That's when I realized. My mom had told everyone, told them I was thinking about helping my sister. They had made my pain public, turned my doubt into spectacle. One morning, the phone rang at work. It was my supervisor, asking to speak with me. She said she was concerned, that she'd received several emails from different people, questioning my ethics, my compassion. Anonymous, of course, but I recognized the pattern. Recognized Lauren's soft poison, the seeds she planted with fake smiles. I went home in shock. Every corner of my apartment felt tight, suffocating. I started having small anxiety attacks, heart racing, trembling, shortness of breath. I locked myself in for 2 days, ignored every call, took a leave from work, and on the 3rd day, someone knocked on my door. It was her, Lauren, thinner, no wig, wearing an oversized coat, sunken eyes, but still with that same look, that look that pierced you, as if she were evaluating you. I hesitated, but I let her in. She walked through my living room like she owned it, sat on my couch, looked around. You live well, she said, as if surprised. I stood by the wall, trembling inside. She looked at me calmly and said, I came in person because I thought maybe, if you saw me like this, so weak, you'd change your mind. I swallowed hard. Lauren, I didn't say I wouldn't do it. I just asked for time. She laughed. A short, dry laugh. You always need time. Always doing things on your own terms, like the world has to wait for Emily. The word stabbed. Then she stood up, took 2 steps toward me, and said low and sharp, if I die, it'll be your fault, and everyone will know. In that moment, I froze. I couldn't answer, couldn't scream, couldn't cry, just stood there, frozen, like my whole body had shut down. The silence between us was deafening. She knew exactly what she was doing, every word chosen to hit where it hurt the most. Then she turned, grabbed her bag as if nothing had happened, and walked out. No glance back, didn't even ask for a ride, despite how fragile she looked. She hadn't come for help. She came to ensure control, to plant guilt. I closed the door with shaking hands, collapsed to my knees on the living room floor. I felt filthy, violated, like her venom still lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long time, I wondered if it would ever end, or if I was doomed to be their emotional puppet forever. The next day, I got an email from the hospital. It was an automatic confirmation. Bone marrow collection appointment, scheduled for Tuesday, 9 a.m. No one had consulted me. No one had called. They had just booked it. That was it. The decision had already been made. By them. I called the hospital, said I hadn't confirmed anything. The receptionist sounded awkward, said someone from my family had scheduled it on my behalf. I asked for a name. She hesitated, but eventually said it. Margaret Wilkins. My mother. I wanted to scream, punch the wall. They were erasing me, replacing me, treating my body like public property. That night, I got another message from my mom. You're going. Enough drama. Think about your conscience. And then, it clicked. They never once asked how I was. Never asked if I was scared, if I had doubts, if I needed support. To them, I was just a functional piece of meat, a resource, an emergency item, and I was the only one who still saw my pain as something real. Because to them, my suffering was a whim. My hesitation, cruelty, my existence only made sense when it revolved around Lauren's survival. On the morning of the supposed appointment, I stood at my front door with the key in my hand, silent. The alarm had gone off 3 times already. I was dressed, shoes on, hair tied back, but I couldn't turn the doorknob. It was like my whole body had turned to stone. I no longer knew if what I felt was fear, anger, or exhaustion. Maybe all of it at once. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls from the hospital, my mother, messages in the family group. Are you seriously going to cancel last minute? You're embarrassing us. Think of God, Emily. He sees everything. And I stood there, wondering, did God also see all the times I cried alone in the bathroom as a child, while my sister told everyone I was a mistake? Did he see the moment my mom told me, in those exact words, that I was an emotional burden? Did he see the years I spent trying to earn love? The worst part? I still felt guilty. Yes, even after everything. Even with every scar wide open. There was still that tiny cowardly part of me that whispered, what if she dies? What if you regret this? Because that's what they planted in me since I was little. That if anything went wrong, it would be my fault. That my existence was a liability. That I was the misplaced piece that could ruin everything if I didn't stay exactly where they wanted me. And then, as I stood staring at the door, I got a new notification. This time, a screenshot. A friend had sent it. It was a tweet from Lauren. Sometimes it takes a tragedy to reveal people. Some show love, others show emptiness. Thousands of likes, broken heart emojis, comments like, stay strong. You'll get through this. Family isn't blood, it's action. She didn't say my name, but everyone knew. Update. Last night something happened that shattered everything. My mom showed up at my door again. I wasn't expecting her. I hadn't answered her calls, hadn't replied to her texts. But still, she came. This time, she wasn't alone. She brought Matthew, my brother, the golden boy, the untouchable, the one who always stayed silent while everything happened. When I opened the door, I saw both of them. My mom's face was tight with restrained rage. Matthew looked awkward, or maybe just uncomfortable. Can we come in? She asked, as if doing me a favor. I walked ahead without answering. They followed. My mom went straight to the armchair like the apartment was hers. Matthew stood by the door like he wanted to disappear. She got straight to the point. Enough. Your hesitation has caused enough pain. Lauren is getting worse, and you're hiding behind old grudges that should have been let go long ago. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was already pounding. Do you really want your sister to die thinking she was never loved? She said, in that passive-aggressive tone she had mastered. I took a deep breath, Said I was still processing everything, that maybe we should talk to the doctors before anything else, that this wasn't just an emotional decision. She laughed, looked at Matthew and said, "See? Always the same speech. Always the victim. Always demanding understanding. Always using the past as a shield." Then, she stood up, came close. So close I could smell the same perfume she'd worn since I was a child. And she whispered, "If you don't do this, you're no longer part of this family." That's when Matthew finally spoke up. "This isn't right, Mom." But she ignored him and said, looking straight into my eyes, "If you let Lauren die, don't show your face at the funeral." Something in me cracked wide open at that moment. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was a kind of dry silence inside, like my body had shut off some emotional circuit just to keep standing there. My mom sat down again like she had won, like she had delivered a fair ultimatum. Matthew just stood there, watching like the floor had dropped beneath him. I asked quietly but firmly, "So that's it? You only want me if I'm useful? If I shut up, give in, do what you expect?" My mom didn't answer right away, just stared at me. And for the first time, I saw no regret, no doubt, only disgust. Like I had become such a disappointment, she didn't even bother hiding it anymore. "Emily, no one's asking you to like it. Just do what's right." What's right? That sentence echoed in me like a punch. Right, for whom? Because what they called right had always been a tool to silence me, to shape me, to turn me into a convenient version of the invisible daughter. Then my mom pulled an envelope from her bag, placed it on the coffee table. "If you want to think it over, here's the lawyer's number. If Lauren doesn't survive, everything goes to you. The house, the insurance, the furniture, everything." Matthew's eyes widened, so did mine. This wasn't a conversation about love. It was a negotiation, a final blackmail, one last push to break my will, a prize for the donation. I stared at the envelope, and inside it, along with the papers, I felt the weight of everything I'd carried my whole life, the attempt to buy my silence, to numb my trauma with property, with promises, with guilt. I looked at the envelope like it was a bear trap in disguise, because that's what it was, an emotional trap wrapped in fake generosity. One last breath of their old story. "See, we do value you, we thought of you, but only if I did what they expected, only if I gave in." What I wanted at that moment was to tear it up, scream, throw that paper in her face, but my mother fed on reactions, so I stayed silent. I reached for the envelope slowly, looked her in the eye and said, "Thanks, I'll think about it." The silence afterward felt eternal. My mom stood like she'd closed a deal. Matthew gave me a sad look but said nothing. When they left, I slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I stood there, trembling, envelope in hand, sat down on the floor, took a deep breath, and opened it, not out of interest, but because I needed to see how far they were willing to go. Inside the envelope, along with the lawyer's card, there was a copy of a provisional will. Lauren had written it a few days earlier. On paper, she wrote that everything she owned should be left to me, in the name of love and reconciliation. Love, reconciliation. 2 words she had never used with me in real life. 2 words now printed on paper, as if they could erase years of humiliation. I started crying, but not out of emotion. It was a dry cry, of rage, of accumulated frustration, of decades suffocated under the weight of obligation. I didn't want anything from Lauren. I never had. And the more I read those sugary lines, crafted by a paid lawyer, the more I felt the truth slipping through my fingers. They didn't see me. Never had. Never would. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor with a bottle of water between my knees and the envelope still open in my lap. The faint light from the fridge was the only thing on. I felt like a child again. That same crushing feeling of abandonment that used to swallow me when I heard laughter on the other side of the door, knowing the party was theirs, not mine. I didn't want an inheritance. I wanted a memory, one real moment of affection, one sincere gesture from my sister. But there was nothing, not a single memory of her defending me, protecting me, loving me. Everything about her was performance, image. And now, even her illness had become a stage, one more chance to dramatize her sainthood, and cast me as the villain. I picked up my phone, opened my call log, and stared at the hospital's number. My fingers hovered over the dial button. I knew what would happen if I called. I knew all this pressure would turn into a wave of applause, that I'd be exalted as the noble sister, the martyr, the one who overcame the past for the sake of goodness. But no one would know the truth. No one would see that inside, I was in pieces, that what I'd be giving wasn't just marrow. It was my identity, my dignity. And then, my phone buzzed again. A new message. From Lauren. No text. Just a photo. A selfie of her in the hospital bed, smiling, with the caption, "Hope never dies. I felt the air leave my lungs like someone had punched me in the chest, because I knew that smile. It was the same one she had when she locked me outside in the winter, the same one when she told everyone at school I was a thief, the same one when she destroyed my scholarship. It was the smile of certainty, of victory, of manipulation. And in that instant, everything became clear. She wasn't asking me for anything. She was beating me. Update 2. I did what I never thought I had the courage to do. I blocked them. All of them. One by one. My mom, my dad, Matthew, Lauren, the hospital, mutual contacts, everything. I deleted group chats, silenced notifications, changed passwords, locked down my accounts. And for the first time, the silence was mine. Not out of fear, not out of giving up, but out of self-preservation. The next morning, I went to the hospital, but not to donate, to speak with a social worker. I scheduled a meeting, entered the office, introduced myself firmly, handed over the documents, and with the same voice my mother once called too aggressive, I said, I was coerced. I do not consent to the procedure. No signature made in my name is valid. No decision was mine, and I want this recorded, legally. The woman looked surprised. Maybe she expected someone timid, trembling, but I was calm. Not because it was easy, but because if I didn't take back control now, there'd be nothing left of me to protect. She confirmed that an appointment had indeed been made, that my name was on documents digitally signed days ago. I asked to see them. And when I did, there it was, a fake signature, the handwriting, identical to Lauren's. That's a crime, right? I asked. The social worker hesitated. If it's proven to be forged, yes. I left with copies of everything and walked straight across the street to a law office. I showed the documents, told the story. No sugarcoating, no shame. For the first time, as it really happened. The lawyer didn't take her eyes off me. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "You have a case, a real one, not just for forgery, but for emotional abuse, coercion, and public defamation. I can help you, if you want." And in that moment, I wanted. I went home with a mix of nausea and relief. My whole body trembled, but it was a different tremble, not of fear, of something I hadn't felt in years. Power. For the first time, I was defending myself, not just protecting, fighting back. I spent the rest of the day preparing everything, gathered screenshots of messages, emails, social media posts, call logs, organized folders, made backups, scanned everything. My hands were sweaty, my stomach twisted, but I kept going, because something inside me, something they had always tried to crush, had finally woken up. Later that day, I got the first unknown call, then another, and another. They realized they were being cut off, that the narrative was slipping out of their hands, that I, finally, no longer belonged to them. And then came the email, signed by Lauren Wilkins, CC'd to my mom, her lawyer, and me. Subject: official note regarding the procedure. The message was carefully written, clean, formal, manipulative. After speaking with my sister Emily, I understand that she is not emotionally prepared to proceed with the procedure. I respect her decision. I've always respected it. My health remains fragile, but my faith is strong. I pray that love will conquer all. Read that again. She is not emotionally prepared. I respect her decision. I pray that love will conquer all. She was shielding her image, redirecting the narrative, positioning herself as the misunderstood martyr, forgiving even without being forgiven. But what she didn't know was that I had already sent the evidence, and the lawyer had already filed a formal legal notice demanding a public retraction and an investigation into the forged signature. The next day, my lawyer texted me. They've started reaching out. They want to negotiate. Silence. Silence. The same silence that consumed me for years. The same silence they were now trying to buy. The offer was absurd. They offered money. Far more than I ever thought they'd dare. A large sum, in exchange for my silence. To not press charges. To not speak out about the forgery. To say nothing about the emotional harassment I endured. The letter was worded with utmost formality, but the content was disgusting. It claimed that the situation was a misunderstanding, that actions taken in desperation shouldn't be punished harshly, and that preserving the family's and patient's image should take priority over old resentments. Old resentments. That's what they call decades of abuse, of emotional destruction, of deliberate attempts to erase my existence. I sent one reply, directly to their lawyer. My dignity is not for sale. Then I blocked everything again, closed my laptop, and went to the bathroom mirror. I stared at myself for minutes. Pale skin, dark circles, hair tied up carelessly. But my eyes were different. For the first time, they weren't filled with guilt, only truth and clean exhaustion. That same day, I posted an open letter on my social media. No names, no insults, just my truth. I spoke about years of being erased, about emotional abuse disguised as love, about how the expectation of sacrifice hides behind the word family, about how donating your body shouldn't be the only way to be accepted. The post went viral. Thousands of likes, shares, comments from people who finally felt seen. Forgotten siblings, invisible children, silenced women. I wasn't expecting support. But I received a wave, not of pity, but of recognition. People saying, "You described me." People who finally understood that kindness doesn't mean submission, that blood is not the same as love. And when Lauren saw it, she knew. Because for the first time, the story wasn't hers anymore. 2 days after my post, I received an email from Lauren. It wasn't formal. No lawyers, no carefully chosen words. It was raw. All lowercase, barely any punctuation, like it had been typed in a burst of tears or rage. "You destroyed me, you exposed me, you lied to everyone I was trying to reconnect. But of course you prefer attention over reconciliation, hope you sleep well." I read it 4 times. Not because of the message, but because of the pattern. Even when she tries to sound vulnerable, she only knows how to attack. Even when asking for affection, it's laced with guilt. Even when claiming to want peace, she spits venom. I didn't reply. Not out of fear, but because there was nothing left to say. A few hours later, my mom called. This time, I answered. Not because I wanted to hear her, but because I needed her to hear me. Her voice was dry. No warmth, no concern. Straight to the point. "You destroyed your sister publicly. There's no coming back from this." And then, like she had saved the worst for last, she said, "She was hospitalized again. She's weaker. If something happens, it'll be your fault." That phrase, it froze me for a few seconds. But then, something in me broke. In the best way. And for the first time, without shaking, without crying, without hesitating, I said, "If something happens to her, it's your fault. Yours, for allowing, feeding, and perpetuating all of this. I spent my life trying to save a family that never existed. Now I'm saving myself." And I hung up, blocked the number, and for the first time, I felt no guilt, only relief. They made me believe all my life that breaking ties was weakness, but breaking away from that was the strongest thing I've ever done. The next morning, my lawyer called early. The hospital had reached out. They wanted to protect themselves. They officially confirmed that no procedure would happen without my signed consent, that they recognized a breach in protocol and had opened an internal review. That was all I needed. Not to punish anyone, but to ensure they'd never again try to touch me without permission. Not physically, not emotionally. My lawyer asked if I wanted to move forward with the case. By then, it wasn't just about Lauren. It was about all of them. My mother, my sister, the lawyer who forged papers in my name, the veiled and open psychological pressure. And I said yes. Yes, I wanted to go all the way. Not for revenge, but for justice. Justice for every time my voice was silenced, for every ignored wound, for every minimized scar. I didn't just want to defend myself. I wanted to prove to myself that it was real, that I wasn't crazy, or weak, or ungrateful. And then, for the first time in years, I went for a walk. Just me. No phone. No fear of running into anyone. No hiding. The city was the same, but everything felt different. The trees, the buildings, the sound of traffic. Like the world had changed texture. I passed by a bookstore window and saw my reflection in the glass. At first, I didn't recognize her. But then, I did. I saw someone who had been beaten down on the inside her whole life and was still standing. Not perfect, not untouched, but alive. That night, I slept with the balcony door open. The breeze soft, quiet, weightless. For the first time in months, maybe years, I slept without sweating, without replaying old scenes in my head, without the floor threatening to disappear under my feet. The world hadn't changed, but something in me had. The next day, when I opened my email, I saw a new message from Lauren's lawyer. The tone was completely different now, still formal, but nervous, like someone trying to sound composed while drowning. He said that, due to exposure on social media and legal proceedings, the client is temporarily stepping away from public platforms to protect her emotional and physical health. He asked that all future communication be strictly legal. And finally, he requested that I reconsider continuing the legal action, given the irreparable emotional damage to the family's reputation. I laughed, alone, staring at the screen, because that was their fear. For the first time, they were tasting a fraction of what I'd felt my whole life, powerlessness. But what they still didn't understand was, this wasn't revenge. It was liberation. It was truth. I closed my laptop, went to the kitchen, made coffee, a simple gesture, but that morning, it tasted like a new beginning. My lawyer texted right after. The judge had granted the protective order. Legally, they couldn't contact me anymore. No calls, no visits, no messages. The silence, now, had the backing of the law, and it was mine. I went for another walk, this time with no destination. Just the lightness of someone who finally didn't have to prove anything to anyone. It's been 3 weeks. No calls, No notifications, no unexpected knocks on my door. The space they used to occupy in my life isn't exactly peace, but it's silence. And after so many swallowed screams, silence feels almost like a miracle. Lauren is still in the hospital. I know because Matthew, the only one who still exists in a gray corner of my memory, sent me a short, neutral email. He wrote, "She's alive. Thought you'd want to know." I didn't reply, not because I don't care, but because replying would open a door I spent years fighting to close.